Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Cynthia Stryker with Waterfield Technologies, and I'm going to be your moderator and host for today's discussion. Before we get started, I just want to go through just a couple of housekeeping items here with you. First, Q&A. So we will be taking questions throughout today's event. We definitely want to hear from you and help address as many things as we can throughout the half-hour allotment that we have. So go ahead and use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to submit your questions to myself and to the panelists. We'll get to as many as possible. Any that we're unable to get to, we'll be sure to follow up after the event. Also, keep your eyes open for an email from us here in the next day or two for a notification as to when this webinar is going to be available to you in a recorded format. And then we'll also include some links there to some downloadable resources to help you with your AI journey. So now to kick things off, I want to introduce our two panelists here with us today, Mike Henches and Ted Hunting. So Mike oversees our product innovation team here at Waterfield Technologies, and he's responsible for overseeing that our products, our services, our solutions align not only with what's going on out in the industry and making sure that we have all the newest technology incorporated, but also ensuring that it meets customer demands, both our customers and yours. So Ted is joining us from our partners over at Bright Pattern and holds the position of Senior VP of Marketing. Now, Ted has also led teams over at some of the industry's top platform providers, as well as various innovative startup companies. So we're really excited to have his expertise in customer service and customer experience here with us today to help guide this discussion. Before we hand things over to these guys, though, we want to conduct a quick poll. We want to get a feel from you as to how you intend to use AI within your contact center so that we can then tailor this discussion a little bit more around your needs and your expectations. So the poll is just launched. So what we're looking to understand is, how do you intend to use AI in your contact center? So you have the options in there of self-service, agent assist, both self-service and agent assist, or I have no idea, I just know that I need to use this. We still have responses coming through. All right, let's see. Well, it looks like the overwhelming majority, about 61% of you say that you're looking to use AI with both self-service and agent assist. About 23% of people saying they intend to use it for self-service alone. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump right in, rather than just rehashing some of the same questions that we've held in other webinars. Why do you need AI? How do I get started with it and all of that? What we thought we'd do here today is jump into some actual use cases that we are seeing with our clients. How are our clients actually using AI within their contact center today, and what type of results are they seeing from that? So I am going to go ahead and hand things over to Ted with the first slide. He's going to talk a little bit about omnichannel conversations.
Okay, great. Hey, thanks, Cynthia, and thanks everyone for joining us. So in terms of the day, Mike and I and Cynthia, we want to sort of hit things quickly, as Cynthia mentioned, try to keep things within a half an hour, and hopefully everyone here will leave with at least one really good idea, maybe for now, maybe for the future. And I wanted to share a couple of thoughts in terms of omnichannel conversations and AI. So if you think about it, AI is basically, there's a couple ways it can be used. It can be used externally, like with bots, and it can also be used internally for like agent assist. And one of the things that's very interesting is, I know Gartner has mentioned that most of the bots deployed in the last couple of years are actually going to be ripped out because of poor CSAT. And because a lot of companies are really implementing it as a silo in their operation. And we did a roundtable at CCW Europe last year. And one thing we found is many companies were afraid to use bots externally. They wanted to use them more. They wanted to use AI internally more. So just hearing this new stat that 61% look to use it for both, it's clear that the world has progressed even in the last year here. So the first example with externally facing AI, you can actually see over on the far right of the screen. Here's an example where the bot is basically doing a little bit of triage, getting some basic information, and then to use the Forrester expression of blended AI, where the information's collected and then routed with full context to the agent when an agent is not needed. That's a great example of sort of that blended AI approach. So it's basically, we've always heard about, is it bots, is it humans? But the reality is having bots and humans work together is one of the key applications. So there's a good example there of sort of that seamless, effortless, continuous conversation from bots to humans. The other area, and this is what we actually see more from a lot of the early adopters, is really having the AI agent assist. So here's an example in the middle of the screen where someone's saying, hey, I'd love to go to Maui someday. And then in this example, AI is actually able to provide some recommendations like, hey, have you thought about the Westin Kaanapali, whatever it happens to be. And this same capability though, here's an example where the agent might be on the chat channel, but this could be any channel. It could be through text message. It could be like an SMS. It could be a video chat, could be email, could even be something like a Facebook Messenger. So having the ability where AI can actually assist the agents and make them more effective with natural responses makes for a more effortless personal discussion as well. And then finally, this ability to see real-time sentiment. And I love the language supported is coming. We'll get to that probably in the Q&A. That'll be a fun one to talk about. But you can see the happy space. Giving the agent the ability to see the sentiment in real time as well is another way AI can help assist the agent. So just very quickly, a couple of examples. Externally facing AI as well as internally facing AI are a couple of the key ways to get started quickly with AI for immediate impact. And
Thanks,
Cynthia, back to you.
Yeah, thank you. So Mike, you're up next, and you're going to talk a little bit about an IVA or intelligent virtual agent that you've installed within a retail setting.
Yeah, thanks, Cynthia, and also welcome to everybody that's joined us today. We see a lot of use cases today where our customers are trying to understand better what callers need when they contact them. The old style of presenting a menu, press 1, 2, or 3 for an option, and pushing people almost like herding lemmings, getting them into the right slot and push down the path is really an old style approach to customer service. We're seeing people leverage AI's ability to understand natural language, to pull intent out of a conversation with a customer, is allowing us to really open up the dialogue that we have in automation to be a much more natural interface for applications. We worked here with a retail customer who's very obviously concentrated and is highly in tune with their customers' perception of their environment to get a natural language, open-ended front door into their contact center and identify, using AI technologies, the kinds of requests that an automation environment can provide an answer for. Where's my package? What's the tracking number? Getting information about a recent transaction and relaying that back to the customer are simple tasks that an automated environment can perform really well. But we're not getting in the way. If a customer is trying to buy something, a place where a human agent adds a lot of value to that conversation, we're quickly and efficiently connecting that caller back to the agent, again, with context, letting them know so they can continue the conversation and not start it over again. So this kind of an environment of bringing in customer queries, using my natural language understanding of the AI environments to identify tasks that we can perform really well, but not get in the way of my agents where they add a ton of value has been super helpful to this customer. And then we moved beyond just the voice part of the contact center and also are using it with text-based communication, chat, both web chat and other text medium, of realizing that the same inquiries are coming in over both channels. We can leverage all of the work that we've created on our AI models and use them on multiple media types. There are some differences. We have to be a little bit careful, but we've seen a lot of leverage in what we've been doing to understand customers and have that apply on multiple channels and get great leverage out of that AI investment and build out. And it's worked really well.
Great, thanks, Mike. Ted, I think we're back to you for this slide.
Great. Okay. So I wanted to actually provide a little bit of a different view. So we think of AI and we think of all these, new technologies like bots. And I wanted to actually show an example. This is actually an innovative unicorn startup in Asia. So, a unicorn startup with a valuation over $1 billion. And they're very mobile focused. And even so, they get a tremendous number of interactions on email. So I wanted to take an old traditional channel like email, and you'd think, well, how can AI have a play here? And what they're basically dealing with in their situation, and I'm going to actually jump into a little bit to that question that came in via chat, because I noticed there was a question around language, and I noticed we also had a participant from Buenos Aires as well, so may or may not have been the same person. But what they were finding is they had customers, and they had 14 different Asian language variants. And in this case, you'll actually see in the bottom of the screenshot, we're using an integration with Watson for AI here. But one of the key takeaways is to make sure that as part of your AI strategy that you really are open to the best of breed providers. So here at Bright Pattern, we work with Watson, we work with Google, we have our own AI and Lex and so forth. But what we actually have seen in this particular example is Google actually handles the languages best in that part of the world for the different Asian language variants. So in their case, what they were doing is they were actually using Google to identify the languages. And they were also using Google in a word cloud fashion to identify specific keywords. So basically then once an email came in, they could check on the language and they could see the department based on the keyword. And they were basically using that with skills-based routing to get that interaction to the person who had the language skill, as well as in the correct department. What I wanted to mention is even though this is an email interaction that they started with first, that same capability could be applied to any of the different digital channels. So it could also be applied to a text message coming in. It could apply to something coming in through their mobile app, which is what they're going to be doing next. It could even be a messenger. So this ability to improve your business processes using AI to maybe identify some of the intent through keywords, similar to what Mike had mentioned, as well as languages, and then routing to someone who can handle them is another great example here.
So Mike, back to you here with our fourth example, talking about an alarm monitoring instance that you have set up.
Yeah, here's another use case where we've implemented, in this case, an IBM Watson AI environment to, again, better understand what the intent of the caller is. What's the reason for their interactions today? An alarm monitoring service that we worked with was seeing a high rate of what they called false alarms. It wasn't an emergency type situation or connection piece. People were testing the system, was accidental triggers, other components that didn't need immediate human actions to take. And by applying an AI to a really unknown kind of start to the application, you can imagine if something's accidentally gone off and you start talking to somebody, people are confused. They don't know what's going on. Well, how come you're talking to me? And so an AI environment was able to handle the wide variety of different kinds of inputs that came into the system and effectively triage them, pull out an emergency reaction type of use case and get that to an agent for processing and to get responders lined up to handle, but effectively taking those non-critical components, running that caller through basically a closeout of the alarm in an appropriate way, and really took advantage of the power of the AI environments to understand what the true meaning of the caller's request was, and was able to better align the right outcome to the right kind of input. So it's been another case where we've seen that we're solving a problem using artificial intelligence that I couldn't do with traditional technology. I didn't have a grammar, a set of expected words that people were coming in with. I really needed an open-ended interaction and force the systems to understand and respond to that caller's input. And understanding that information in a more intelligent way is allowing us to be careful and safe around potentially very important types of alarms with confidence, knowing that we're not going to make a mistake, that we're going to be able to safely interact with callers that are appropriate for us, but then again, get humans calls that they're best positioned to answer.
All right. So we've got some audience questions that have been coming in, and I don't know, Mike, maybe you can start with this one, just talking about, how has an IVA been used for other types of contact centers? Like what other type of centers does it make sense to introduce an intelligent virtual agent?
Yeah, really most contact centers have at least some use cases where an intelligent virtual assistant and the front end of their interactions makes a lot of sense. We're finding a lot of use both in kind of the traditional frequently asked questions. Callers call in with a very simple question: what's the address? What's your store hours? Things that are quick question answer type components that we can identify very easily. And then the other major use case is transaction oriented. I want a status of an order. I want to make a payment. I want to perform a function with the business. And having the virtual assistant be able to very naturally move from identifying the nature of the request and then fulfilling that request if it's capable of doing so in an automated way really enhances that user experience and keeps it from being disjointed. So we're seeing customers use both of those kinds of use cases in an automation environment really well.
Okay. And Ted, I know you touched a little bit around languages and what's supported there. Is there anything that you could expand on around the Bright Pattern platform in that area?
Yeah, a couple of things. And I wanted to also just sort of add on to what Mike said, because I think, and then I'll jump into the language. I think the nice thing is about use cases is every company cares about self-service, right? So the use cases are across the board, regardless of industry. And I think what's really exciting is if we were to ask everybody on this call, how many people love self-service, I bet we'd have 95% of the hands would go up. But if we asked how many people love your IVR, no hands will go up. So clearly there's a gap there. And I think what's nice about the AI is now we have these conversational IVRs that can really make an effortless experience. It's not like you have to say, hit 2 to hear my balance. You can actually speak freely and ask for what you want. So it's really, to me, it's exciting to see, look forward to the days when these IVAs and what's coming next is going to be so much better. And that also relates to language, because language is a barrier. I mean, we all get, the question when you call into an IVR, what language you want to speak. And what we're finding is, so for example, in the Bright Pattern platform, we have our native, currently we have native American English is sort of our key capability, which we'll be expanding. But I think with AI, a lot of times part of the problem with why we don't have effortless service is because of all the silos we have, whether it's in different channels. And I think AI can be a silo as well. So we take the approach of best of breed AI. So we have our own AI, but we also have, built-in AI with Watson. Watson does some incredible things. We have built-in with Lex, Microsoft, and so forth, and Google, of course. So I think the key with the language capability is look at the use case you're dealing with, like the Asian language examples that we had with this travel unicorn in APAC, and then take the AI that works best for that use case. So the idea is keep it open. Don't create more silos for yourself. We've created silos that, less than 20% of companies have true omni-channel conversations today, and it's largely because of the silo technology. And now we're at a point where we need to make sure the silos don't exist anymore, because that's what creates all the friction for the customers.
I'll add on that all of the North American languages, Canadian French, Mexican Spanish, Portuguese, are well supported in the AI environments. This is a nation or a global implementation component. There are implementations of these technologies in Europe, in Asia. There is wide support for multiple languages throughout the whole AI infrastructure. A lot of research and development is being done to implement these technologies worldwide. This isn't a US English only based platform.
So the short answer, regardless of your language, we have you covered.
Yeah.
So talking a little bit about those use cases, are there some that have like a higher rate of return on them than others do?
That's a mix, and really ROI is based on volume. Where you're applying automation, you're going to be looking to get the most benefit from that automation that you can. And the more volume you can attach yourself to, the more opportunity for improvement that exists. I think it's also important to remember that we have a rich platform here. BrightPattern does a great job of connecting callers to agents with context. You don't have to completely automate the call to have automation add value to the call. We can screen callers, we can identify use case, we can collect basic information, and then let the agent complete the task. And that still adds a ton of value to the contact center, beyond kind of the traditional, automated call versus human-handled call. That blending of those technologies and making sure that you have a seamless experience can really bring additional value to the contact center.
So there are a few more questions here from the audience, but I think that we're going to touch on some of these throughout the demo section here. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this forward, Ted, and let you kind of walk us through the demo that you've prepared.
Awesome. So before we actually start, we have a short demo video we wanted to share. Before we jump in, I just wanted to take a moment. We talk about omni-channel conversations that are, seamless, continuous, effortless. And one of the things that's interesting though, is I wanted to talk about another application of AI. So most companies don't really measure the quality of most of their interactions. So companies today, if you look at it, and it's largely because of the silos again, you might have a quality management system for voice, you might have another one for email, and each of these systems is expensive, they're disjointed, and they're separate. And what we're seeing now is now that we have this plethora of new channels like Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp and other channels coming into being, is most of these interactions, if you look at the industry data, over 99% of interactions on these channels are not measured. Voice is still the one channel that is measured, but if you look at the stats, it's for a lot of large companies, it might only be 1% of interactions. So what's exciting about AI, another application we wanted to share, another use case, is this ability to monitor 100% of interactions on every channel. So we've got a short little demo video that we'll jump into now. And to start things off, this is where a supervisor is actually able to review interactions. So this supervisor, he or she may say, let me look at everybody who reports to me, and let's do a search where maybe the word cancel was used in an interaction. It could have been in a web chat, could have been in voice, could have been in an email. And then the supervisor is actually able to pull up those specific interactions, maybe review the NPS, maybe review the CSAT. Even over on the far left, you can see the sentiment. So you might have like the different channels. And when he or she finds an interaction that they'd like to drill into, they can actually then review the entire interaction. They can sort of see, okay, what was the sentiment at different points in the interaction? What were some of the questions being used? And then over there, in terms of on the right, they can then do some grading and coaching, which we'll look at in more detail in a second. So let's take a little bit closer look at that example. So this next little video clip is using AI to help with the evaluation. So we've got, most of these interactions are not evaluated. The supervisor can say, show me the low sentiment interactions, show me transcription. So in this example, AI could maybe transcribe from any interaction. And this is actually then populated. The supervisor can review it. The supervisor can then also, throughout the interaction, see what sentiment was through AI at various points in the interaction, use a scrubbing tool to actually go to that point in the interaction And then based upon it, they might want to then coach the agent. These could be remote agents as well. So they might want to say, hey, how did they do it at the greeting stage? How did they do from a cross or upsell stage later? So AI can help really find those needles in the haystack where there's maybe friction and effort in the customer experience. And then the supervisor can then coach and help those people, even if they're, again, remote agents, wherever they happen to be. So that's another great example of how AI can help not only help with the omnichannel conversations, but omnichannel quality management. And again, what's amazing is most interactions on most channels from virtually all companies are not measured today. And we care so much about the customer experience, but you can't improve what you can't measure. So it's another really exciting aspect of AI here as well.
All right. Well, I know we were trying to be very respectful of everyone's time today, trying to keep this session to a half hour at most. So I'll just ask you guys at this point, Ted, Mike, do either of you have anything that you'd like to share and wrap up here?
I'll just chime in. Their intent, their sentiment, what kind of questions do they have, and really pull meaning out of that. Whether that's shared with an agent as an agent's talking, whether it's used in self-service, whether it's used to better route that call and that interaction. Those are all ways that understanding the input that you have can be really helpful in providing extra value to the contact center.
Cool. And a final thought from my end is I think so many people, we tend to see the next great new thing. So it was bots and everyone ran out and we got to have a bot. And then the bots were maybe crappy bots because they were deployed in a silo. And then now with AI, people say, hey, I've got to have AI. So from my standpoint, the single biggest thing we can do is always take an outside in approach. So a lot of times people will say, I need a bot. So you create a bot, but they don't start with the customer. That's inside out versus outside in. So if we start outside in and we start with particular use cases, like Mike, especially in his role in charge of innovation at Waterfield, he sees some really cool use cases. So start with the simple use cases to get started with AI. Think of your customer first and then architect outside in as you deploy AI. Don't look at it just as a cost saving metric, but really start with the customer. You start with the customer, it's really hard to screw things up. So that'd be my final thought.
All right. Well, that's it for us today. So thank you, Mike. Thank you, Ted. Thank you to everyone here for joining us for the discussion. Keep your eye open for an email, again, with the on-demand link, as well as some fun resources that we'll be sending your way. And of course, details on how to get in touch with us if there's anything that we can assist you with within your contact center. So we look forward to seeing you and everyone at our next session. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Cynthia. Bye, guys.
Thanks everyone.
For joining.